Amazon was my employer and not my business, I could sue them for how little they paid me last month. But unfortunately, making less than minimum wage when you're a business owner is kind of more your fault. So let's talk about how much I made on Amazon last month, break down all the expenses, all the fees, all the profits, and why, if we're looking at it on a per hour basis, I'm kind of okay making less than the minimum wage last month, at least in terms of what I actually got paid out. But we're also very literally running out of daylight. Let's head into Inventory Lab and give you a little bit of context. This month was the first month, October, that I actually started sending in shipments to Amazon. Since I'd been building out that van for the last month and a half and didn't do any work for that time, so I really have to get the ball back rolling, get some momentum, get Amazon to trust me again. So this is what that looks like in terms of shipments on Inventory Lab. Head over into list, close batches, and we'll see shipments down here, Inventory Lab test from July, and then this shipment had nothing in it. Then we have 1, 2, 3 shipments in October. I actually sent in more inventory in October than I was used to doing before I left in the van, and it should pan out really well, but so far it hasn't quite done so. So the first thing let's look at is my actual Amazon sales for the month of October. Going in here, we can see I sold $5,290 just about. Actually $5,289.59 more specifically, but that was down 50% from the last October, mostly because if we go over into Seller Central, this blue line is this year, and we can see it was almost nothing until my shipment actually got into Amazon and started selling good again. Now from that $5,300, there are two different numbers that can be a little confusing that I'm going to try to explain pretty simply. I really hope this doesn't add any additional confusion, but these are the two numbers. The first one is $2,019.45, and that was my buy cost from the inventory that I shipped into Amazon. This doesn't necessarily correlate to the sales that we made on Amazon, that $5,300 number, but it is important in terms of the cash flow from my business, because that's what I actually spent on inventory that month versus what I actually sold. That's because I spent about $1,000 the first shipment, $800 something the second, and $150 the third shipment. The other number, which more directly correlates to the $5,300 that was sold, was this number, $1,348.21, and that is the cost of the goods sold. So that $5,300 split up between however many items, what I paid for all of those items was the cost of goods sold, that $1,348 number. These can correlate to two different systems of accounting. I won't get into all of that here, it's a lot confusing. The first way is probably how a lot of new people on Amazon will sell and how I tend to think about my business, because this $2,019 number is more of a cash-based accounting system. Basically, that's because that $5,300 after Amazon's fees is what I'm gonna get back in cash, quote unquote, and this is what I have to spend in cash, quote unquote, even if I'm using credit. So this is money in versus money out. This is more of an accrual based, because in big companies, when you do accounting for stuff that sells, you don't actually write off the cost of the goods until they sell. And so that's why you have a cost of goods sold thing. And so this is what it would be if I was a bigger company. And this is how we can more accurately look at the ROI in terms of my items that I purchased. But it's also important to look at this number, because if I'm always sending in the same amount of inventory to Amazon, around $2,000 a month, eventually I would hope to meet an equilibrium point where my cost of goods sold was also $2,000, because that would mean that every month I'm sending in $2,000 and getting back $2,000 plus profit. And that's where you're kind of at a really stable place in your business. I really hope that made sense. If it didn't, let me know and I can try to further explain in separate videos. Now these next numbers might not be perfectly precise, because sometimes Inventory Lab is off by a tiny bit. But let's break down what happens to that $5,300 in sales before it actually gets into your pockets, and how we can actually determine how much profit I made. So if our sales were $5,289.59, we're not actually gonna see that as our available balance on Amazon, because Amazon takes their fees out before you see any of that money. Now for the month of October, I actually went ahead onto Inventory Lab, and if you have it, you can do this too, but if you go up here to reports, profit and loss, then it'll actually show you the fees for the month. So I'm gonna go to monthly, October, and we can see that the total fees were $3,500 for this month. I'm just gonna subtract out the cost of goods sold, and that will give us all of the Amazon fees that we had to pay before that money even got to our bank account. That includes returns, any chargebacks, it includes all the shipping to Amazon, Amazon's Pro Seller $40 per month subscription, and their fees for me, according to Inventory Lab, amounted to $2,086.80. And so in terms of the total amount of balance that I had over the month of October, it should have been something around $3,200, because that's the sales minus Amazon's fees, and that's what they'll pay you out. So let's look at what my two Amazon payouts were for this month. If you're on the payment dashboard here, you can just go over here to all statements. In October, we had one payment here and one payment here, which were for $609 and $598. And like I said a second ago, we should have expected that our payouts, our balance gets paid out to us, would be equal to around $3,200. That's confusing because our payouts only amounted to $1,208 and change. Now that's because at the end of your payment period, you're gonna have a reserve balance at Amazon, more than likely. Normally it's for the last week of sales before they actually get to the customers. And so pretty much the rest of that was in the reserve balance at Amazon, which will get paid out in 2 more weeks. And so when it was all said and done, my profit from Amazon preliminarily, before we actually get to more fees that I have to incur, was only $672.41. What's crazy though is if we just did it specifically cash based, instead of making over $670, since we spent almost $650 more on inventory than were our cost of goods sold, we would have only made like $1.17. So our ROI was actually not the worst. It was 49.87%. So that means for every dollar that I spent on inventory that I sold on Amazon that month, I made $1.50 back. But that's not actually where the story ends, because beyond paying all of Amazon's fees, there are also fees for softwares and other things that I have to do every month in order to get my stuff to Amazon, find stuff for Amazon, and manage my inventory and reprice. It's so pretty right now. Do you see this? This is insane. So to do all of that, I obviously need to pay for stuff. And this is what we're looking at. Originally, we had $672.41 of kind of gross profit is how I would call that. That's the profit after paying off inventory or whatever my buy cost was. Then I have to pay for Inventory Lab, which is $49 per month, which I use for Inventory Lab and Scoutify too. All these are linked in the description if you're interested in them. Scout IQ is $14 a month. Then I have to pay for QuickBooks, which is $6.24, because I split that between this business and my wife, since that's how we do all of our accounting. It's all in the same business, we just split it based on operating expenses. Be Cool, I actually don't have to pay for because I pay for it annually, so I'm not actually worried about that as a monthly expense. It's not cash that's coming out of my bank account because I already paid off the monthly subscription. Then I have business insurance for $50. Then I have everything that I use, which is just specific stuff that I had to buy. It was for the video that I posted, everything I used to ship stuff while living in a van. And that cost $320.64, which is a lot of money. That'll definitely eat into this month's really small profits. Boxes were $15 to $20 this month, and then packing materials were $0 because I just reused a bunch of stuff. So all that meant that at the end of the day, I only ended up with $212.53 of profit. It is not easy to read in a mirrored monitor screen on my camera, which is only a 15.76% return on investment, which at that point is really not very good. But we can pretty much double that because this is a one-time expense. And I already had most of this in an operating account that was saved for things like this when I have down sales months, so I didn't really have to pull out of the profit from this time. But if we're gonna be as real as we can be, those are all the expenses that I had this month compared to the income that I had. But that doesn't really tell the whole story, because now we have to look at how trash the hourly rate is when I only made $200 of profit. I've actually been getting a lot faster at sourcing. If this was back in Orlando, I would have spent a lot more time sourcing the same amount of inventory. Luckily, I've been engaged in a lot more stuff, so my runs are much more efficient when I'm buying inventory. That being said, buying stuff, I still took about 20 hours to purchase when I'm in the stores. It's kind of hard to quantify this versus time spent actually filming for YouTube, because that definitely takes a lot longer to film and source than it does just to source. But I try to split them apart pretty well. But I also have a video about how much income I made on YouTube, and you can watch that because I think it's already out. Then I probably spent about 16 hours doing the shipments. They took way longer than they needed to because I had to learn way too many lessons, which you've probably already seen if you watch those videos. So, doing the genius calculation of $212 of profit divided by 36 hours is $5.90 per hour. Less than $6 an hour in my Amazon business is not great. There are some reasons why, and it's probably not going to be that way long term. It's definitely not going to be that way long term. Normally it's closer to like $30 or $40 an hour. So this month was definitely an anomaly, but also a teaching lesson that sometimes it doesn't always go really well. This also isn't super fair because I sourced 50% more than were my cost of goods sold, because I'm trying to ramp up a little bit. So it'd probably be closer to like $9 or $10 an hour, but that's still not very good. In terms of how I'm allocating that money, this month is actually pretty much all just going into a pot in October so that we can pay off all of our credit cards for like van stuff and all of that. Next month will be very different though, and I will be making a video breaking down exactly how I use my Amazon business to continue to pay for itself, buy more inventory, subsidize my lifestyle, and make sure that the business is set for the long term. So subscribe for that video. Otherwise, watch the YouTube income breakdown over here. If you have any questions about this video, let me know down below, and I'll probably get back to all of them pretty specifically, and maybe even make a follow-up, because this can be very complicated. Like, it's a lot easier to talk about how to source and ship than it is how to handle your money in the business, but the money is probably the most important part, because you can do all the other stuff great, and if you're trash with money, it's not going to do you any good in your life. This place is crazy. Look at this. And also goodbye, but this view is awesome.